Radio DePaul.
Well, as we say in the radio business,
is Chicago's college
that's right.
connection. There's only one radio station that connects you to DePaul University, Chicago, and the world.
Hey, you in my class? I am today.
It's Radio DePaul, Chicago's college connection.
Welcome back to the lineup here on Radio DePaul, Chicago's college connection. And we're talking Brooklyn Nets basketball here really quick. Again, the Nets are playing terrific basketball here in the month of January at 8-1 here in January. Again, that's Jason Kidd having the resurgence as well. And Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett playing great basketball too in the month of January. And that's where we bring in Andy Vasquez of The Record in New Jersey. Andy, are you with us?
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. It's going great here, and Eli Hershkovich alongside Tom Bostwick talking to you today. And let's dive into the Nets. You know, the Nets are playing some good basketball, but as you mentioned in your article that you published on NorthJersey.com, the Nets' revival due in part to Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. And you had a very funny tweet here as I pull this up, talking about Kevin Garnett, and of course, reporting for the Brooklyn Nets. You get to be with all the players and every day. And Garnett said on rediscovering his jumper, we're not talking about the jump shot. I'll see you guys later. Just a Kevin Garnett kind of comment to say. So talking about Garnett and Pierce, obviously their stats have been much lower than what we've seen in the past. What are your thoughts on what Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett have brought to this team and this record in January? Again, the 8-1 start since the November and December struggles.
Yeah, man, I think the Nets are the only team in the league hotter than the Bulls right now. I mean, the way Chicago's been playing since that Deng trade. But I think with Paul and Kevin, what everybody would admit now that they wouldn't have admitted back in September at Media Day is this was a much bigger adjustment than any of them expected. I mean, these guys have been the man, respectively, for each of them their entire career. The offenses have always been run through them. The ball has always gone in their hands, and they've always played a lot of minutes. So for them to come suddenly to a team, I know they're getting older and their minutes are steadily decreasing, but for them to come suddenly to a team and be asked to put in a secondary role, I think both of them had a hard time adjusting to that. And now I think they're a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more assertive, and you're seeing the results.
No, absolutely. And looking around the rest of this team, obviously this team was built to obviously win a championship now with Kevin Garnett's age and Paul Pierce's age and stuff. But the loss of Brook Lopez for the year, obviously Brooklyn's been playing terrific since he went down. But do you think this is going to come back to haunt them as they get into the playoffs and try to make a run?
Well, they've said the expectations didn't change, and I think what else can you say at this point? But Brook Lopez is he's an all-star center. He's the most consistent and reliable player on this team offensively that they've had. Personally, I think for them to win a championship, it's going to be it was really tough without Lopez. But they have found a style of basketball that they're playing now, which is more free-flowing, more based on speed and switching on defense, that they probably couldn't have played with Lopez. And with Brook, for the 17 games or so he played this year, this team has never had an identity. It was half the time they wanted to throw it down to Brook and let him post up and play with his back to the basket. And the other half the time they wanted to run. I mean, now they've got an identity. The identity is unselfish. The ball keeps moving and the defense keeps shifting and it's working for them. So I'm not saying they're better off without Brook Lopez, but I think they're a lot more confident right now than they have been at any other point this season.
How about being better off without Darren Williams as well? You're talking about Darren Williams coming back on Tuesday night against the Magic, and he's now willing to come off the bench for the Nets as well. Is there a timetable that Williams will be back in the starting lineup, or is this the kind of thing where D-Will is willing to sit on the bench and play off of Sean Livingston until this Nets team starts to hit the downfall again?
Well, we can only go by what Darren says, and today at practice, he said that he'd be willing to I think we asked him, how long would you come off the bench for? Would you be willing to keep it going even after you're feeling 100%. He said, why not? Now, I believe he'll be back in the starting lineup probably within a similar situation to Pierce earlier in the year, where Pierce said, I'll come off the bench for as long as possible, but really it only lasted like 7 or 8 games. That's the way I see it. But what it has allowed the Nets to do is, when him and Livingston were starting together, there just wasn't a point guard at all in the second unit. And right now, with Darren as a point guard in the second unit, it's working. But I don't think it's going to be – look, if the Nets are going to do anything, make any noise in the playoffs, they're going to have to be doing it with Darren Williams playing like the point guard he was in Utah and like the point guard he was in the second half of the regular season last year before, they saw the Bulls in the playoffs.
No, absolutely. And he was brought to Brooklyn, obviously, to be a central part of this team, and I think that's what they had in mind. But looking now at Jason Kidd, obviously with all the distractions and all the issues early in the season with Lawrence Frank and everything else, are you seeing that he's coming into his own as a coach? He's sort of found his philosophy, sort of found his groove, and that's helped contribute to this turnaround as well?
He is definitely much more comfortable than he was. This season has been so strange. And a few weeks ago, the only way it could have got 3 weeks ago today, the team was 10-21, and you're thinking the only way the season could get any stranger is if this team somehow gets hot, and that's exactly what they've done. And I think a lot of it has to do with Kidd. The thing with Frank was, Kidd had to kind of assert himself and prove that he was the only voice in the room. And I think when he did that, the players were loyal to him. And what is amazing to me is the amount of respect that other players have for him. I mean, Garnett and Pierce clearly respect him. Even Carmelo Anthony for the Knicks is talking about how much the Knicks miss having Kidd as a leader on the floor, like they had him last year. So, I think his influence as a leader, he's commanded so much respect from the team, and I think there's definitely been a big difference in the way the Nets have looked because Jason Kidd is more comfortable and more sure-footed as a coach.
Now you talk about Kevin Garnett and, of course, the struggles that Garnett has faced this season with the off and on the court injuries, averaging only 6.9 points per game, 6.8 rebounds. But a kid in Mirza Teletovic, tell me if I'm pronouncing that right or wrong. You can correct me.
Teletovic, yeah.
Teletovic, okay. And Teletovic is a guy who's stepped up, whether he's in the lineup, starting lineup, or coming off the bench. As we talked about it with Darren Williams, who might not be willing to come off the bench later on in the season, but I'm sure Teletovic will be. And he can have some big games as well. So what's with Teletovic and his three-point shooting that the Nets really like? And has he found a home here in Brooklyn?
Well, he's definitely become a fan favorite, and his ability to shoot the balls has been really important for the Nets. He seems to come up with timely threes. He's not known. People think of him as a defensive liability at the power forward, but he's made some big defensive plays late in games. I think everybody saw in the Miami game when him and LeBron got into it. The guy's not afraid of anything. He's not afraid to take a shot. He's not afraid if LeBron's coming at him and talking junk all up in his face. He's not going to back down from him. So he's a hard-nosed guy, a good guy to have coming off the bench, and a guy who can make shots. And the Nets have had a lot of guys like that this year. Who knows? Where would they be without Teletovic? Where would they be without Sean Livingston? Where would those guys? Where would they be without Allen Anderson? Who would have thought Allen Anderson would have such a huge impact on the way the season's gone so far? So it's a lot of guys, and Teletovic is just one of them who you would have never thought would have such an impact on the season, but he's been huge. Yeah,
kind of going from these crucial guys that fill in roles that you weren't expecting to a guy that the Nets were planning to lean on heavily, and they have so far this season. Looking at Joe Johnson, obviously over 20 points in his past 3 games, and he's been on fire really since. Really, as the Nets have gone up, so has Joe Johnson. And sort of harking back to the Brook Lopez point, is it finally that Joe Johnson kind of feels like the guy again, or that he can kind of take his shots more than looking to have to feed it to Brook Lopez? Is that?
I think it's not just Brook being out. It was Darren being out too. I mean, there was no question of where the Nets needed to go to get points, and give Kidd credit. He told Johnson, I need you to be aggressive early in games. And he did something when we were in Oklahoma City Johnson was in the middle of a bad shooting slump. It was like he wasn't even at the game in San Antonio, and he comes out and he misses a bunch of shots to start the game in Oklahoma City, and the Nets make a comeback. I think they were down 19 in the second half. They make a comeback. They get the ball tied with 5.3 seconds left, and who does Jason Kidd call on? Joe Johnson. And the whole team believes, no matter how difficult the shot is, when the game is on the line and Joe Johnson has it in his hands, they believe it's going in. And I mean, he's been insane the last since he's joined the Nets. He's been insane in the final seconds of games, and that kind of started it all off. And Joe, Kidd had asked Joe to be aggressive early in the games, and I think before the last game he had scored 20 points in 3 out of 4 first halves. 3 games in a row, he's already had 20 points before halftime. So, I think it's helped that Joe can feel like the shot is there when he wants it, and that his teammates and his coach wants him to take it.
Now, let's switch to another bench player here. How about the assault rifle that is AK-47? Again, the Russian maniac off the bench. Just again, the points per game isn't there, and it doesn't need to be for AK-47. 5.6 points per game, 3.1 rebounds. But what does he bring to this team on the defensive end? But not only that, the intensity that he could bring, and all of a sudden that we've seen in January since he's been back, it's been a completely different Nets team.
Yeah, there's a couple things that he does that Kidd likes to say it doesn't show up on the stat sheet, and there's a few things that he does that are like that. First, these loose balls that like the Nets just weren't getting to before. He missed 25 games in a row with back spasms, and there would be loose ball after loose ball that just somehow the Nets wouldn't get to, and now this guy is tracking them down, and he's doing it when other teams are making runs. So he comes up with these big plays that kind of can halt the momentum that another team has, and it's hard to like kind of quantify that, but it's definitely there. And the Nets, just in terms of having another guy at the 3 who can eat up minutes is really helpful to them because they kind of have a shortage there. So he's been a big help, and I think a lot of the reason the Nets have had better second half success and done better jobs of stopping runs is because Kirilenko brings this intensity and this attitude, and as you said, defensively, they can ask him to guard a Durant or they can ask him to guard a James, and he can effectively, eat up minutes doing that. And you don't really need that much from him on the other end. But although he delivers, some scoring and he really does a nice job of moving the ball in offense.
Talking about this Nets resurgence and the sort of turning the ships around here, is the feeling around the team that this is the Brooklyn team we're going to be seeing the rest of the season, or are fans and everyone associated sort of tempering expectations to see a little more from them, to see a little more extended good play before they get their hopes up?
They were tempering expectations after that loss in Toronto a couple weeks ago. I guess it was I don't remember what it was, but they won 5 in a row to start the new year, and they lost in Toronto and headed off to London. And Sean Livingston said that night in Toronto, we haven't done anything yet. We got They had a 5-game winning streak. They were still 6 games under 500. And he was right. They hadn't done anything. They've come back and they've won. They won their next 3 games since they've been back. They're finally, they're in playoff position. I think everybody's pretty optimistic going forward that this is the Nets team that we're going to see. And really, this has been a sustained 3 weeks of play. It's incredibly eerie, man, because you go back to last year, this team was a team in turmoil in San Antonio on New Year's Eve. They had just fired Avery Johnson on December 27th. The record was much better. They were 14-14 when Avery got fired, but it had been a really bad stretch of basketball, and they go to San Antonio and they get crushed, and they go to Oklahoma City and get this win that nobody expected them to get, and then go on and win 10 of 11. And this year they go to Oklahoma City, get a win that no one expects them to get, and they've won 8 out of 9. Nobody saw that coming. So I think the fact that happened last year has people excited